Welcome to the Deep Dive. We're the place that takes your sources and really digs into them to find the most interesting parts.
That's right.
And today, for you, we're jumping headfirst into the Mothman legend. We've got articles, research notes, everything you sent.
A really rich batch of material this time.
Definitely. We're going to trace its spooky origins, look at the incredible impact it had, and sort of understand why it stuck around for so long.
It's a fascinating one.
It really is. So get ready, because we're about to unpack a truly extraordinary story. Maybe find a few surprises, too. Okay, so let's get into it. The whole Mothman story, it really kicks off November 15th, 1966, Point Pleasant, West Virginia.
Yeah, that's the date everyone points to. It's when this creature, this cryptid, really hit the public radar.
And it started with a specific sighting, right? Near some old buildings.
Exactly. You had Roger and Linda Scarberry and Steve and Mary Millette. They were driving on State Route 62 near an old National Guard armory. And a power plant. That's when they saw. Well,
and the description is just chilling. 6, maybe 7 feet tall.
right. Humanoid, but also kind of moth-like. Bipedal.
And those eyes. Giant red eyes glowing in the headlights. That must have been terrifying.
Oh, absolutely. Panic. Roger, he floored it, sped away. But the creature, it supposedly followed them.
Followed them? How?
Well, the report says it lifted off the ground, almost like a helicopter. They said it was a clumsy runner on the ground.
Right, near the power plant.
Yeah, but in the air, it could glide incredibly well. Kept pace with their car, even when they hit like 100 miles per hour.
100 miles an hour. That's unbelievable speed for something gliding.
It's a core part of those first accounts, that speed and agility.
So that first sighting happens, total panic for the couples involved. What about the town? How did Port Pleasant react when the news broke?
Well, the local paper, the Point Pleasant Registry, ran a headline the very next day. Something like, couples see man-sized bird creature, something.
Captures the confusion perfectly.
It does. And interestingly, it wasn't like an angry mob formed. It was more curiosity. People actually grabbed their hunting rifles and went out looking for it for several nights.
Really? They went searching for it.
Yeah, they wanted to see it for themselves, figure out what was going on.
And it wasn't just that one sighting on the 15th, was it? I think one of the sources mentioned something happening even earlier.
That's right, yeah. There's this other story, possibly an earlier encounter from the day before, November 14th, over in Salem, West Virginia.
Okay, what happened there?
A man named Newell Partridge. He said his dog, Bandit, a German Shepherd, saw these two glowing red circles in the woods and just bolted after them. The dog was never seen again, vanished. And that story, the vanishing dog, became a really potent part of the whole Mothman myth, still talked about today.
Wow. So whether it started with the dog or the couples on the 15th, these first encounters just opened the floodgates, didn't they?
Pretty much. More reports started coming in, people seeing Mothman outside their houses, chasing cars.
Even stealing pet dogs, that's mentioned too?
Yeah, the fear was definitely spreading. And the person really documenting all this locally was a journalist, Mary Heyer.
From the Athens, Ohio Messenger, right?
Exactly. Her first big article was November 16th, Winged Red-Eyed Thing Chases Point Pleasant Couples Across Countryside. Classic headline.
And she later worked with John Keel.
Yes, she collaborated with John Keel, who was a paranormal journalist from New York. That led to his 1975 book, The Mothman Prophecies.
Ah, the Keel book. That's the big one.
That's the one. That book, and then the movie in 2002.
With Richard Gere.
Yep. That's what really launched Mothman and Point Pleasant itself into the national spotlight. Put them on the map for paranormal enthusiasts.
Okay, so the town is already reeling from these bizarre sightings, and then something truly awful happens, something that gets tangled up with the Mothman story forever. Let's talk about the Silver Bridge.
Right. The Silver Bridge disaster. It happened December 15th, 1967, so just over a year after those first big Mothman sightings.
And this bridge connected Point Pleasant to Gallipolis, Ohio.
Correct. It was built way back in 1928. And, well, the problem was it just wasn't designed for the heavier cars and trucks of the 1960s.
So it was structurally unsound.
Essentially, yes.
Yeah.
A single crucial piece, an eye bar near the top, cracked under the strain, and the whole thing just collapsed. Catastrophic.
46 people died, drowned or crushed. Just horrific.
It was a terrible tragedy for the community.
And this is where the Mothman connection gets really, really dark, isn't it?
It really does. Because, officially, the cause was structural failure. But the timing.
Coming so soon after all those Mothman sightings.
Exactly. For many people, that wasn't just a coincidence. The link felt undeniable.
So while some people saw it as just a tragic accident, others thought Mothman was involved somehow.
That's the core of it. Was Mothman a warning? A harbinger of doom? Some reports even claimed it was seen on or near the bridge shortly before the collapse.
Wow. And John Keel's book really leaned into that connection, didn't it?
Oh, heavily. The Mothman prophecies basically wove everything together. The sightings, the bridge collapse, even adding in reports of UFOs and other strange phenomena in the area.
Like Men in Black showing up.
Yeah, Keel included all of that. It solidified Point Pleasant's reputation as this hot spot for the paranormal, for conspiracy theories. Yeah. Mothman became this omen, this symbol of impending disaster for a lot of readers.
And after the bridge collapsed, did the sightings just stop or taper off?
It largely declined, yeah. The main wave seemed to end after '67, but the story never really went away.
And then it popped up again more recently, Chicago.
That's right, big resurgence of interest around 2019. Reports started coming out of Chicago about a similar flying moth-like creature. Enough reports that NPR actually did a piece on it called The Case of the Chicago Mothman.
Ah, so the legend lives on.
It definitely does. It seems to tap into something enduring.
Okay, so we have these incredible stories, the tragedy of the bridge.
Right.
It leads to the obvious question, what on earth were people seeing back then? There must be dozens of theories.
Oh, absolutely. And they range from the fairly mundane to the completely out there.
Let's start with the more grounded explanations. What did scientists or wildlife experts suggest?
Well, one prominent theory came from Dr. Robert L. Smith, a wildlife biologist at West Virginia University. He suggested it could have been a misidentified sandhill crane.
A sandhill crane. How big are those?
Pretty big, almost as tall as a person with a wingspan up to 7 feet. And crucially, they have reddish coloring around their eyes.
Ah, the red eyes.
Exactly. So the idea is maybe one of these cranes wandered way off its usual migration path. It's plausible, right? A large, unusual bird in an area people weren't used to seeing it.
That makes sense for some sightings. What about other birds? I think the sources mentioned an owl.
Yeah, other suggestions include things like the great blue heron, which is also large. And there was actually a snowy owl shot in Point Pleasant back in '66. It was described as a giant owl, nearly a 5-foot wingspan.
And that owl is in the Mothman Museum now.
That's the one. So misidentified large birds are definitely a leading rational explanation.
Okay, birds explain the size and maybe the reddish patches. But what about the really weird stuff? Those glowing red eyes, especially the ones seen in daylight, or claims of it chasing cars at high speed.
Skeptics have tackled those too. Joe Nickel, for instance, suggests the glowing eyes could just be the red eye effect light reflecting back from an animal's eyes, like from headlights or flashlights.
Okay, that works at night. But the daylight sightings?
That's trickier. Benjamin Radford points that out Connie Carpenter's alleged daylight sighting with glowing red eyes is harder to explain away with simple reflection. Nickel also mentioned known hoaxes, like construction workers apparently tying flashlights to helium balloons.
So pranks were definitely part of it.
Seems likely some element of hoaxing was involved, yeah.
Which leads to another theory. Maybe it all started as a prank.
That's definitely on the table. The idea is someone maybe hiding out in that abandoned munitions plant complex, the TNT area, as locals call it.
Right, that creepy abandoned place near the first sighting.
Exactly. Maybe someone started it as a joke, dressing up or using some kind of contraption. Then the story gets picked up by the media, goes national.
And suddenly everyone's seeing Mothman everywhere.
Yeah, local panic sets in. People start interpreting any large bird, any shadow, any strange noise through the lens of the Mothman story.
Yeah.
Even if the original prank stopped, the fear kept generating sightings. It speaks to how mass hysteria can work.
It really does seem like the psychology of it all is just as important as trying to find a physical creature. What do folklorists say about this?
That's a really key point. Folklorist Jan Harold Brunvan pointed out that many elements of the Mothman reports the giant winged creature, the red eyes, the sense of foreboding. They echo much older folk tales from around the world.
So it's like a modern manifestation of ancient archetypes.
Possibly. Maybe something real. A large bird, a prank, triggered the initial scare, but then people's minds automatically slotted it into these pre-existing patterns of folklore. Those stories about Mothman attacking car roofs, for example, fit right into older monster lore.
And what about the more recent sightings, like in Chicago? Is there a psychological angle there, too?
Well, David A. Gallo, a psychologist from the University of Chicago, looked into those. He noted that many of the reports were coming in via paranormal websites and forums.
Ah, so people already interested in the subject.
Exactly. He called it a selective sample. These are likely people already inclined to believe in, or at least be open to, such phenomena. Doesn't mean they didn't see something, but their interpretation might be influenced by their existing beliefs.
That makes sense. There's also this idea connecting interest in the supernatural to stressful times in society, and something called dark tourism.
Right, that comes from Kim Stryker, who teaches folklore at George Mason University. She suggests that interest in things like Mothman, ghosts, UFOs often spikes during periods of major social or political upheaval.
Like the late 1960s.
Precisely. It's maybe a way of dealing with real-world anxieties, and she connects this to dark tourism people visiting sites of tragedy or paranormal events.
Why would people want to do that?
Stryker thinks it might be a way to sort of inoculate ourselves against fear. By confronting these controlled, maybe even fictional scary things, we feel a bit more prepared to handle the real, uncontrollable scary things in the world. It's a coping mechanism in a way.
Fascinating. Okay, so we've covered birds, pranks, psychology, folklore. What about the really out there theories? Aliens, supernatural beings.
Yeah, you can't talk about Mothman without mentioning those. Ufologists and cryptozoologists have definitely weighed in.
What do they propose?
Well, the ideas include Mothman being an extraterrestrial alien, maybe scouting the area, or a supernatural entity like an Omen or even some kind of interdimensional being, or the classic cryptozoology angle, an unknown biological species.
Like a giant undiscovered owl or moss?
Something like that. But the unknown species theory runs into problems, mainly the square cube law from physics.
How does that apply?
Basically, as an animal gets bigger, its volume and weight increases much faster than its surface area, like wing area. For a creature described as 6-7 feet tall with maybe a 10-foot wingspan,
It would be too heavy to fly.
exactly. The physics suggest it would be highly unlikely, if not impossible, for a biological creature of that size and shape to actually fly or even glide effectively.
So biology kind of works against that theory. And Keel's book added even more weirdness, right? Precognition, Men in Black.
Oh, yeah. Keel's book wasn't just about the creature sightings. He claimed residents experienced premonitions of the bridge collapse, had UFO encounters, and were visited by these mysterious men in black, warning them to keep quiet. It really layered on the high strangeness.
So Mothman remains this incredible enigma. But what has it meant for Point Pleasant today? It seems like it's become more than just a scary story from the past.
Oh, much more. It's become a huge part of the town's identity and even its economy. Rosemary Hathaway at WVU calls the whole cryptid fascination a renaissance for the region.
A renaissance? How so?
Well, it's fostering this real sense of local pride. West Virginia, as a state, sometimes deals with negative stereotypes from outsiders, but embracing Mothman, Bigfoot, other local legends, it gives them a unique story to tell, something intriguing that draws visitors in. It generates tourism revenue and allows them to kind of reclaim their narrative.
It's like they're saying, yeah, we have weird things in our woods, and that's cool.
Exactly. It taps into that long Appalachian tradition of storytelling, tall tales, ghost stories. Cryptids are like the modern version of those cautionary tales about respecting nature and the mysteries it holds. They're homegrown heroes in a weird way.
And there's one person who's been really central to keeping the Mothman story alive and documented in Point Pleasant, right? Jeff Wamsley.
Absolutely. Jeff Wamsley is key. He's a Point Pleasant local, and his dad actually worked at that National Guard armory where the sightings happened.
So he grew up with the stories.
Deeply immersed in them. And he felt it was important to preserve that history. So in 2005, he opened the Mothman Museum.
What's in the museum?
All sorts of stuff. Archival materials, police reports from the time, witness accounts, evidence collected. He's also written books on it. He's really the keeper of the flame, you could say.
And the museum is kind of ground zero for the annual Mothman Festival. That sounds like a huge deal for the town.
It's massive. It started back in 2002, and it just gets bigger every year.
Yeah.
Wamsley estimated pre-pandemic they were expecting over 15,000 people.
15,000 in a town of less than 5,000.
Yeah. It's a huge influx. It happens the third weekend every September. They have guest speakers, vendors selling Mothman stuff, pancake eating contests.
Pancake eating.
Apparently.
Yeah.
And hayride tours out to the TNT area, the sighting locations. It's a full-on celebration of the legend.
So Mothman is everywhere now. T-shirts, food.
You bet. T-shirts, coffee mugs, cookies shaped like Mothman in cafes, tons of stuff on Etsy. It's totally woven into the local commerce and culture.
And there's that big statue too, right?
Yep, the 12-foot-tall metal Mothman statue by Bob Roach, unveiled in 2003. It's like the town mascot now, a major photo op for tourists. Point Pleasant has fully embraced being a dark tourism destination.
It really sounds like, as Jeff Wamsley said, the fact that it's unsolved is what keeps people coming. Everyone wants to investigate for themselves.
That's exactly it.
Yeah.
The mystery is the appeal. People come, they visit the sites, they read the accounts, they look at the evidence in the museum, and they try to make up their own minds. What really happened here?
It's part of the town's history now, for better or worse.
Definitely for better, in terms of identity and tourism, I'd say.
Well, we've certainly taken a deep dive today, from those first spine-chilling sightings back in 1966 through the tragedy of the Silver Bridge, looking at all the different theories, birds, pranks, aliens, and seeing how this bizarre legend became this, well, this cultural powerhouse for Point Pleasant.
It's really something, isn't it? What fascinates me is how stories like Mothman, whether you land on real creature or folklore or something else,
Yeah.
they just generate so much meaning for a community.
Yeah, it becomes about more than just the story itself.
Exactly. It becomes about identity, shared memory, a connection to a specific place. It resonates through generations, told in that authentic Appalachian way. Hathaway called Mothman the Michelangelo of the Appalachian cryptid renaissance, which I love.
That's a great phrase.
It really captures it. So maybe the question for you listening now is, what are the strange stories from your hometown?
Yeah.
The local legends, the things people whisper about?
Everyone's got one, right?
Almost certainly. And it's worth thinking about what those stories mean. What fears or hopes or anxieties might they be tapping into in your community? There's a kind of magic in these local mysteries, isn't there? A sense of enchantment, even in the spooky stuff.